I forgot to tell my mother-in-law that my mom had installed a camera at the country house. At the time, it seemed like such a small detail. Something unimportant. Something that didn't deserve a dramatic announcement over tea and forced smiles. If only I had known what that tiny omission would reveal. The dacha had always been my sanctuary. A small wooden house at the edge of a quiet lake, surrounded by birch trees that whispered in the wind. It belonged to my parents for years before they gave it to me after I got married. My husband and I would visit during holidays, sometimes inviting his mother along because she insisted that family must stick together. I tried to believe she meant well, but there was always something about her tone, sharp, almost territorial, whenever she spoke about the house. As if it were hers. As if I were merely a guest in my own childhood refuge. A few months ago, my mom suggested installing a small security camera in the living room. Just in case, she said. It's empty most of the week. Better safe than sorry. I agreed without thinking twice. It wasn't about spying. It was about safety. Or so I thought. Last month, my husband and I couldn't visit the dacha because of work. His mother offered to go there, to air the rooms and check on things. I hesitated but agreed. After all, she was family. 3 days later, she returned the keys with a calm smile. Everything's fine, she said. Though honestly, you should take better care of the place. Her comment stung, but I swallowed my pride. I had learned that confronting her only led to drama. My husband always chose the path of least resistance, which usually meant asking me to just let it go. And I did, until yesterday. Mom called me in the evening. Her voice was strangely quiet. Sweetheart, she said gently, have you checked the camera footage recently? My stomach tightened. No, why? I think you should. I opened the app on my phone with trembling fingers. The screen loaded slowly, as if it understood that what I was about to see would change something inside me. At first, everything looked normal. My mother-in-law walked in, placed her bag on the table, looked around. She opened windows, dusted shelves. I almost felt guilty for doubting her. Then the second day's recording began. She was on the phone, pacing across the living room. Her voice, clear and sharp, echoed through the speakers. Yes, of course she doesn't know, she said. The house is practically ours anyway. My son invested money here after marriage. If anything happens, we'll prove it's shared property. My breath caught. Shared property, she continued, laughing lightly. Honestly, she's too naive. You should see how easily she trusts everyone. Even left the old jewelry box in the bedroom. I told my sister, young wives need guidance. The screen shifted as she walked toward the hallway. Minutes later, she returned holding something small. My grandmother's silver locket. She examined it under the light. I felt my hands grow cold. She won't even notice if something disappears, she muttered. I paused the video. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I ran to the bedroom drawer where I kept the jewelry box after our last visit. The locket was missing. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. That maybe I had misplaced it. That the footage was misleading. But deep down, I knew. I resumed the recording. Later that evening, my husband arrived at the dacha. He hugged his mother warmly. They sat at the table. She poured tea. I've been thinking, she said softly. You and I should discuss transferring the property formally. It's not right that everything is in her name. After all, you're the man of the house. My husband hesitated. Mom, I'm just saying, she interrupted gently. You deserve security, and she comes from a family that doesn't understand how marriage works. My chest tightened. I waited for him to defend me, to remind her that the house was a gift from my parents long before our wedding. Instead, he sighed. We'll talk about it later. That was it. No defense, no correction, just postponement. The footage ended shortly after. I sat on the couch, staring at the blank screen. My whole body was shaking, not just from anger, but from something deeper. Betrayal layered with humiliation. It wasn't just about the locket. It was about the quiet conversations. The plans made behind my back. The way my trust had been turned into weakness. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I called my mom. You were right to install the camera, I whispered. She was silent for a moment. I never wanted to spy, she said. But sometimes, people show their true colors when they think no one is watching. I decided not to confront anyone immediately. Instead, I went back to the footage and saved copies. Every conversation, every frame. That evening, my husband came home. I need to show you something, I said calmly. He looked confused but sat beside me as I played the recording. I watched his face change. First confusion, then discomfort, then anger, though I couldn't tell at whom. That's not what she meant, he said quickly when the property discussion played. Then what did she mean? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. When the scene with the locket appeared, he went pale. Maybe she was just looking at it, and forgetting to return it. I replied. Silence filled the room. For the first time since we married, I didn't feel afraid of the confrontation. I felt clear, steady. I trusted you, I said. And I trusted her. That house isn't just wood and land. It's my childhood, my grandmother's memories, my parents' sacrifices. He rubbed his temples. You're overreacting. That sentence shattered something final inside me. Overreacting. As if betrayal had a volume setting. As if respect were negotiable. The next day, I drove to my mother-in-law's apartment alone. She opened the door, surprised. Oh, what a nice visit. I need my grandmother's locket back, I said calmly. Her smile froze. What locket? I held up my phone and pressed play. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. You installed cameras, she snapped. How dare you spy on family? It's my house, I replied. In my memories. She disappeared into the bedroom and returned minutes later with the locket in her palm. I was only keeping it safe, she muttered. I took it without another word. On the drive home, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't trembling anymore. The shock had transformed into clarity. That evening, I told my husband I needed space. Not just physical space, emotional space. Trust once cracked doesn't magically repair itself. He accused me of exaggerating. Said families argue all the time. That his mother didn't mean harm. But harm isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle, strategic, wrapped in polite smiles. A week later, I changed the locks at the dacha. This time, I made sure everyone knew. The camera remains in the living room. Not because I expect another betrayal, but because it reminds me of something powerful. Truth doesn't need permission to surface. Sometimes, forgetting to mention a camera reveals more than 1,000 confrontations ever could. And sometimes, the greatest shock isn't what others do behind your back, it's realizing how long you were willing to ignore the signs. Now, when I sit on the porch of the dacha and watch the sun set over the lake, I feel something different. Not innocence, not naivety, but strength. Because the camera didn't just capture betrayal. It captured the moment I stopped doubting my own instincts. And that changed everything. When I changed the locks at the dacha, I thought that would be the end of it. A clear boundary, a silent but firm statement that my memories, my family's history, and my sense of security were not negotiable. I truly believed that once the truth was exposed, everything else would settle naturally. I was wrong. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. My husband barely spoke during dinner. He moved around the apartment like a guest instead of a partner. Every time his phone buzzed, I knew it was her. I didn't need to see the screen to recognize the tension in his shoulders. 3 days after I retrieved the locket, he finally broke. She's devastated, he said, standing by the window. She feels humiliated. I looked at him calmly. Humiliated because she was caught. He frowned. Because you recorded her. It's a security camera in my house. It feels like a trap, he insisted. That word lingered in the air. A trap, as if I had orchestrated the betrayal instead of uncovering it. Did I ask her to take the locket? I asked quietly. Did I ask her to discuss transferring my property? He didn't answer. Instead, he said something that cut deeper than anything else. You've always been too sensitive about that house. Too sensitive, as if childhood memories were decorative items. As if my grandmother's laughter on that porch, my father teaching me how to fix the old wooden gate, my mother planting roses along the fence, all of it, were minor details in the bigger picture of marriage. That night, I realized something painful. This wasn't just about his mother. It was about how he saw me. The following weekend, he announced he was going to visit her. I need to calm her down, he said. I nodded. Go. He left in the morning and returned late at night. His expression told me everything before he even spoke. She thinks you're trying to divide us, he said. I almost laughed at the irony. She says ever since we married, you've been slowly pushing me away from her. By letting her visit our home. By inviting her to holidays. By trusting her with keys. I asked. He ran his hand through his hair. She feels replaced. There it was. The real issue. Not property. Not cameras. Not even the locket. Control. For years, she had been the central figure in his life. The advisor. The decision maker. The voice of authority. And now, Whether consciously or not, she felt threatened. But instead of addressing that insecurity in a healthy way, she chose strategy. Quiet manipulation, whispered doubts, and he, raised to trust her unconditionally, couldn't see it clearly. A week later, something unexpected happened. My father called. I received a strange message today, he said. My stomach tightened. From whom? From your husband's mother. She asked about the legal status of the dacha. Said she wanted to clarify future inheritance matters. My hands began to tremble again, not from shock this time, but from disbelief. She contacted you directly? Yes. I told her the house was gifted to you before marriage and legally documented. She seemed dissatisfied. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't over. It had escalated. When my husband came home that evening, I told him about the message. He looked genuinely surprised. She called your father? Yes. He sat down heavily. For the first time, I saw doubt in his eyes. That's inappropriate, he admitted quietly. Progress. Small, but real. 2 days later, his mother called me. Her voice was unusually soft. I think we need to talk like adults, she said. I agreed to meet at a cafe in the city center. When I arrived, she was already seated, perfectly dressed, posture straight, expression composed. To anyone watching, she looked like a dignified woman wronged by an overreacting daughter-in-law. I never meant to hurt you, she began. I listened without interrupting. I was worried about my son's future. You must understand, a mother thinks ahead. Ahead to transferring my property. I asked calmly. Her lips tightened slightly. I was exploring options. Marriage is partnership. Partnership doesn't mean ownership of what existed before it. She leaned forward. You recorded me without telling me. It's a security camera. Not hidden. And not illegal. Her eyes sharpened. Families don't monitor each other. Families don't take jewelry either. The table fell silent. For a brief second, her composure cracked. You're young, she said finally. You don't understand how fragile marriages are. A woman must protect her position. I realized then that, in her mind, this was a competition. A battlefield where influence determined survival. I'm not competing with you, I said quietly. I'm building a life with your son. That requires trust. She looked at me carefully, as if reassessing. You've changed, she said. No, I replied. I've just stopped ignoring things. That meeting didn't resolve everything, but it shifted the balance. When I came home, my husband asked what happened. I told her I won't tolerate manipulation, I said simply. He didn't argue. Over the next month, something subtle but important began to happen. He started noticing things. Small comments she made on the phone. Suggestions about protecting assets. Questions about our finances that felt intrusive. Comparisons between me and other wives who were more accommodating. One evening, after hanging up with her, he looked at me differently. She asked if we'd consider putting the apartment in my name too, he admitted. And what did you say? I said no. That was the first time he chose a boundary without my prompting. It wasn't dramatic. There were no raised voices. Just a quiet decision, but it meant something. Still, trust doesn't rebuild overnight. We began attending counseling, something I suggested gently, and surprisingly, he agreed to. In those sessions, uncomfortable truths surfaced. He admitted he felt torn between loyalty to his mother and loyalty to his wife. I admitted I felt alone in my own marriage. The therapist asked him a simple question. When conflict arises, who do you prioritize? He hesitated. That hesitation was honest. And honesty, even when painful, is better than denial. Weeks passed. Gradually, conversations at home became more open. Less defensive. He apologized, not dramatically, but sincerely, for dismissing my feelings. I didn't want to believe she could cross lines, he said one night. It's easier to think you're overreacting than to question your own parent. I appreciated that truth. Meanwhile, his mother's behavior shifted. She became distant. Less frequent calls. Polite but guarded messages. The power dynamic had changed. Not because I fought louder, but because I stood firmer. One crisp autumn afternoon, I returned to the dacha alone. The trees were turning gold, leaves crunching beneath my boots. I unlocked the new door and stepped inside. Everything felt still, safe. I walked to the living room and glanced at the camera mounted near the ceiling. It no longer felt like a symbol of suspicion. It felt like a reminder of awakening. I made tea and sat by the window, holding my grandmother's locket in my hand. For weeks, I had focused on betrayal, on confrontation, on legal documents and emotional boundaries. But sitting there, I realized something deeper had shifted within me. I no longer feared conflict. I no longer felt the need to prove my right to my own space. The house was mine, not just legally, but emotionally. In my marriage, it was no longer based on silent endurance. It was being rebuilt on clarity. Later that evening, my husband arrived unexpectedly. "I thought you might be here," he said softly. He walked inside and looked around, almost as if seeing the place for the first time. "It's beautiful," he murmured. "It always was," I replied. He stepped closer. "I didn't understand before. I do now." I searched his face for defensiveness, but found none. "I'm sorry I minimized what happened," he said. That apology didn't erase the past. But it mattered. We sat together on the porch as the sun dipped below the trees. "I told her," he said quietly, "that if she wants to be part of our life, it has to be with respect. No more discussions about property. No more interference." And she wasn't happy. I nodded. Change rarely pleases those who benefit from the old system. But she understood, he added. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because the truth had forced growth. The camera had captured betrayal, but it also captured a turning point. Without it, I might have continued doubting myself, excusing red flags, shrinking my boundaries to avoid tension. Instead, I faced reality. In reality, however uncomfortable, gave me strength. As night settled over the lake, I realized the shock I felt that day wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of a marriage where my voice carried equal weight. The beginning of a relationship with my mother-in-law defined by limits, not fear. The beginning of self-respect that no one could quietly undermine. Sometimes, truth shakes you. Sometimes, it breaks illusions you didn't even know you were clinging to. But sometimes, it also builds something stronger in their place. And standing there, with autumn wind brushing against my face and the lights of the dacha glowing warmly behind us, I understood one final thing. The camera didn't save my marriage. Boundaries did, and I will never apologize for protecting what is mine, not my memories, not my home, and not my dignity.